This week in Sci-Fi, we've got our eye on a look ahead to what's coming in January. Cowboy Bebop hit screens this week. And could Stargate be making a comeback? Welcome to Eye on Sci-Fi, I'm Raymond Fedora. Hitting screens this week is Cowboy Bebop, a live-action remake of the 90s anime series about an unlikely team of bounty hunters in space. At the series premiere in Hollywood, producers were keen to reassure fans that the new series has kept the integrity of the original. In the lead-up to this week's launch, wanted posters were released for some of the bounties that the team will be hunting, which included a giant teddy bear. So yeah, Cowboy Bebop will be available on Netflix from the 19th. Looking ahead to January, Netflix will be releasing Season 3 of Snowpiercer, the train-based adventure set after a global climate apocalypse. Fans have a lot of questions after Season 2's explosive ending, although we can answer one already. Jennifer Connelly will be back. We can expect 10 episodes released weekly from January 26. And Morbius will be in Australian cinemas from January 20. Set in the Marvel superhero universe, but not made by Marvel Studios, it features a scientist who attempts to cure himself, but instead turns himself into a vampire. Keep an eye out for a familiar face in the trailer. Doctor Who's Matt Smith will be playing one of the main bad guys. Speculation about a new Stargate series picked up this week, with co-creator Brad Wright confirming he's written a pilot for Studio MGM. He says the pitch falls within the canon of existing series and includes a new team, but also familiar characters like Daniel Jackson, Sam Carter, and Jack O'Neill. Although it's not clear where a new series would end up. Stargate is currently on stand in Australia, but seems likely to move to an add-on channel on Prime once that licensing deal runs out, which would mean another subscription. More on this and other developments when I'm joined by our North American correspondent later in the show. A Star Trek phaser rifle has topped recent memorabilia auction, featuring over $800,000, a record for items from the franchise, despite only appearing on one episode in 1966, the second pilot. Not even the Man of Steel could beat that, with George Reeves' Superman costume going for a still respectable $475,000. Other items include tunics worn by original series stars, ranging from $68,000 for Captain Kirk's to $34,000 for Chekhov's. And for just $14,000, a Tribble could have been yours, which, given the way that they breed, seems like a great investment. Awards for the second Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival were handed out Sunday. Best Feature went to Vera de Verdad, an Italian-Chilean co-production which tells a deeply moving story of soul transference and shared destiny. Best Director went to Carlson Young for The Blazing World, with a unique vision credited for the film's vivid imagery and cult film feel. Best Short went to Daily Driver, a sci-fi romance shot in Sydney's southwest. And the audience awarded Best Feature to Risen and Best Short to Ellipsis. The virtual festival program has been extended to New South Wales and continues until November 25. This week's poll asked members to predict how the bad guys would be defeated in disaster epic Moonfall, following last week's revelation that the moon was hollow. Members had a range of options to choose from, representing common ways that sci-fi bad guys meet their doom. No single option stood out though, although members didn't back the computer virus option used by Independence Day. Joining me now to discuss that and the week in sci-fi is North American correspondent Christian Baines. Christian, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Raymond. Thanks for having me.
So, Roland Emmerich is, known as the master of disaster, but some of his films do contain sci-fi. Do you think, in particular, in this situation with Moonfall, the sci-fi is really just an excuse to get straight to the destruction of everything, especially the White House?
Well, I think Roland Emmerich has never sort of been shy about the kinds of movies that he does, or the fact that for him, he is about the sensation over the science necessarily. even when his movies are sort of bringing attention to serious scientific issues like climate change or whatever. I tend to think it's best to sort of take a brace for impact approach to any of Emmerich's movies. But I do have a lot of respect for him as a filmmaker. He's sort of done the reverse of the common thing. He's coming to Hollywood from Europe as, you know, an outsider queer filmmaker and doing a lot of the kinds of films that Hollywood's typically criticized for. That's, you know, big on spectacle, big on, you know, as you said, disaster. And there's some unexpected risks in those movies. Like there was a lot of pushback when he wanted to destroy the White House in Independence Day. There was a lot of pushback saying, no, you're German, you don't understand what, you know, and his response to that was, well, this will get people talking about our movie, and why is that a bad thing? So I kind of think with Moonfall, we might be in for more of the same. And I think he's one of those filmmakers like a Michael Bay or what have you, where you are going for the spectacle. He has a certain audience. I mean, it says something for him that 28 years later, or 26 years or whatever we are after the first Stargate film, when he sort of established himself as a Hollywood presence, he's still getting films financed.
Now, something else that is kind of big and bold is the Dune remake. And unfortunately in Australia, it hasn't come out yet. It's due here in December. But how has the reaction been over where you are with Dune?
Big and bold is kind of the perfect description for it. There's been huge anticipation around it. There's been huge sort of back and forth with regards to whether it has to be a cinematic experience or whether this is something that you can comfortably watch streaming. I would say, having seen it about maybe a week ago, I would say definitely see this on the biggest screen possible. This version of Dune. Okay, a little bit of background. I sort of feel like we've been building up to the return of serious adult sci-fi for a few years now. And Denis Villeneuve has been kind of a major force in that, doing Arrival, most conspicuously, and also Blade Runner 2049. But Dune is his passion project, and you can see that in every frame that goes up on screen. He knows there's a lot of material to cover. He has a tremendous reverence for that material, but also isn't afraid to bring it kind of up to date, and put it in a context that'll resonate slightly more with a modern audience. He knows he can't tell the whole story in one film, so Dune 2 is already on the way in 2 years' time. So what we're going to end up with is probably a really wonderful, epic 5 or 6 hour film. And as I said, it's as much a film to sort of feel as it is to see and hear. So I do think it's something that is going to speak well for the need for kind of cinematic experience. And I can see why Warner Brothers have kind of been sticklers, or why Villeneuve has been such a stickler for having it cinematically released, and why Warner Brothers have gone with it. So even though the release has been kind of staggered worldwide, it's definitely being pitched as a cinematic event. And sort of post-COVID, especially with North America, cinemas were decimated. It's going to be a strong argument for Warner Brothers coming back to the theatrical experience.
Exactly right. And speaking of other successful movies that have kind of hit a snag recently, the next Star Trek movie has been delayed, as well as the Star Wars movie that was also planned to be filmed by the director of WandaVision. So what do you think that means for the story and where it's up to, and should we be concerned as fans of both of those universes?
Good question. I mean, in terms of being concerned as fans, I'm going to say no. Like, Star Trek and Star Wars fans will never really have cause to be concerned that they're not going to get more eventually, even if it doesn't quite take the form that it was planned to. I mean, Disney has kind of had an uphill battle with Star Wars since it acquired the franchise. It sort of came out of the gate so strong with Force Awakens, but then it had such a mixed response to Last Jedi, and then it kind of retreated a little bit creatively with Rise of Skywalker, and that was almost universally negatively received. it's had a little bit more success bringing Star Wars to the small screen through series like The Mandalorian and so forth. But it has never been able to break into the Chinese market with Star Wars. And they have tried. It's that the last few films have so earnestly tried courting that market. So I think it's a property that Disney is a little bit just trying to figure out at this point. Like Disney doesn't do moderately successful films. They do mega hits, and they won't settle for anything less. So I think they want to be absolutely sure that whatever the next step is in that universe, they want to get it right. And of course, they want a hot director involved. So yeah, I think getting delayed with regard to Star Wars is just Disney trying to get a fix on where they want that franchise to go, what they want that to do for them. Star Trek is a little bit different because Star Trek has never really been dependent on big screen stories for its success. It's always been a small screen entity, and when it's had a successful film, when it's had a Wrath of Khan, when it's had an undiscovered country or a First Contact, it's always been kind of a pleasant surprise. And yes, most of the Star Trek films have been profitable, but they haven't been blockbusters for the most part. So Star Trek's always put its focus on the small screen. And right now, in terms of quantity, at least, there's never been a better time to be a Star Trek fan. We have, if you count the upcoming Strange New Worlds, that is 5 new Star Trek series in production and on TV at once. That's the most we've ever had before. This is 2. Star Trek 4 has been kind of struggling ever since Star Trek Beyond underperformed a little bit. And then the big thing about that trilogy of films, what was so strong about them right from the first film was the cast. That cast and the fact that they brought their own energy, but also had such loving renderings of the original characters and the original, in tribute to the original performances. And then, of course, we tragically lost Anton Yelchin, who was a vital part of that. So again, I think similarly, maybe to Star Wars, maybe it's taking a step back in terms of, okay, what is Star Trek on the big screen going to look like? Do the original characters have the same resonance they had, 11, 12 years ago when J.J. Abrams did his reboot? Or do we want to perhaps look at new characters? Do we want to look at a Janeway or even some of the Discovery characters? I don't think that will happen for a Star Trek 4 particularly, but it's something to look at for the big screen future of the franchise.
Now, speaking of another series with the word star in it, Stargate, there's some rumors around the writer Brad Wright, who mentioned that he had written the script for a pilot for a reboot of Stargate. And personally, I love Stargate, so I'm really hoping that they can actually take that all the way into filming. But what do you think the chances are of that actually happening anytime soon?
What little I know about this, I think there's definitely an appetite there for it. And I believe Netflix has taken an interest in it. They're trying to court some of the original cast. Although I don't believe it's going to be about the original cast for SG-1. As you said, it is just kind of a pilot for a reboot. So that could take any direction. But if Netflix does pick it up, then I'd say it's definitely looking good for a first season. And after that first season, we'll probably be in better shape to see if it's going to do anything moving forward, or if it's kind of just going to be a callback to SG-1. Now, Stargate, I mean, it's proven its mettle in terms of opening up a wider universe and subsequent series, spin-off series, and so forth. And they've not lasted. I mean, it's pretty hard to rival SG-1 for durability. There's not many sci-fi series that get 10 seasons out of them. But yeah, I think a first season could potentially have legs. There's definitely going to be an audience who will at least give it a chance. And as I said, if Netflix picks it up, probably looking good for 1 season, maybe a second.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Christian.
Thank you very much for having me.
In next week's poll, we're asking members if the metaverse is really a thing, especially for sci-fi. To vote, sign up for free Endeavour Mission membership. Find out more at endeavour.tv. And that's the week in sci-fi. Until next time, stay up to date at ionsci-fi.com.